companies brace from the impact that we're seeing from the coronavirus. And it comes as the Empire State Manufacturing Index rose 8.1 points to 12.9 in February, handedly beating estimates. According to the New York Fed data that we got, that's the highest level that was reported since last May. And joining us now to discuss the overall impact of the manufacturing sector is Tony Uphoff. He's CEO and President of Thomas. And Tony, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Zack.
You just recently checked in with a wide swath of U.S. manufacturers as well and trying to get a sense of how this is impacting everything from orders and inventory to what you're seeing out there. So what are you seeing?
Yeah, so I'll give you kind of two dimensions to set the table here a little bit. So first off, as you might imagine, on the sourcing platform known as thomasnet.com, every 2 seconds somebody's sourcing a product or a supplier. We've seen a massive increase in two major areas. So things around hazmat suits, things around masks, around respirators. So think of these as the first responders to a crisis like this.
Yeah.
Literally up over 1,000% month on month. So
wow.
You can clearly see the impact. Second category is around prefabricated buildings. So you may have read the story that in Wuhan, they stood up a hospital in 10 days. So this is the magic of these prefabricated materials. So what's happened is you're seeing sourcing around, shifts around that as you should. These are first responders, people reacting to the crisis, and our ability globally now to react to these things. These are creating some trickle-down challenges though, right? Because there's only so many suppliers of masks or respirators or hazmat suits. There are industries that rely on those things regardless of something like the coronavirus. So we're starting to now see some challenges, if not breakdowns, in the supply chain.
And on the flip side, though, right? So that's what we're seeing from demand. On supply, a lot of these manufacturers here might source products from China as well, have to deal with delays, as we're seeing a lot of things delayed. They're not just manufacturing in China, but also shipping as well. So what are you seeing about the impact on the supply side for a lot of these manufacturers?
So we did a survey across 500 suppliers, and fresh off the presses, I may glance down at my notes here a little bit. So what you're clearly seeing is nearly 60% of the respondents are already seeing an impact to their supply chains.
60%.
60%.
Seems high from what we've seen so far.
Yeah, but you also realize, our window is into the early stages of the industrial economy. So the data you were just showing, or PMI data, trails a market. We actually lead a market because this is real-time data happening on our platform, and the survey is a real-time instrument. So
60% seems, so you're saying that, I guess that data would kind of indicate that a lot is being overlooked about the impact that might come down the road to a lot of the manufacturers, not even just Apple worrying about things in China, but in manufacturers here.
Well, think of the interconnected nature of supply chains today, right? So how many companies really have logistic muscle? So if the logistics of one shipping company are impacted, by definition, I may use that other company or that company for other types of products and services. So there's, I don't want to call it a domino effect, but there's a very tightly interconnected nature of supply chains today. Yeah. Now, the fact that our manufacturers are saying, hey, I'm seeing an impact, I can't yet say that they're seeing it in their numbers yet.
Got it.
They're clearly seeing an impact. I think what we're also reflecting there is there are concerns here. And these manufacturers are thinking, hey, is this going to affect my supply chain? So what we're seeing is they're looking for secondary, tertiary sources to make sure they don't have a disruption in their supply chain.
And what I found really interesting in your hot off the presses data there is that you were saying that we're going to have to wait till April before some of these companies are going to be able to get the goods manufactured in China to the U.S. Yeah. So I'm thinking about the earnings calls, what CEOs have been telling us so far. Have they been transparent in terms of how they're going to be able to meet demand for everything that's manufactured, made in China, that we want to buy here in the U.S.?
I think so far, yes. The reality is I don't think everybody really knows. And so I think the reality is you are hearing some CEOs come up and openly acknowledge that there could be some challenges here. Nobody's reporting numbers yet because I don't think they really know. So this is very, very early in this process. I think what we're also seeing is a counterbalance where you're seeing a lift in sourcing activity for North American suppliers, which is the counterbalance to something like this. North American manufacturing has been on a growth curve for a very, very long time. Lots of reshoring. So not that there's a positive, I don't mean to say it that way, but I think some of the sourcing can be replaced, not all of it. It's clearly going to impact some of these companies at some point down the road.
See, that's why I think the new update, the number that we got yesterday that we were talking about in the intro here was kind of eye-catching because a lot of concerns were what might be happening to manufacturing in the wake of all this, and it seemed that would indicate that there wasn't so so much. But these numbers would seem to indicate maybe slightly the opposite story.
Well, and in fairness, if you look at the data on demand we're seeing, that's very clear. That's people actually sourcing products and services. It's very clear to see the economic impact of that demand sourcing.
Yeah.
A survey instrument, the likes of which I'm quoting for, are people's assessment of the situation. So I would look at the survey as more qualitative feedback. The demand is obviously more data-driven, empirical feedback.
Got it.
And I think you're going to see that there are going to be some companies that, we've already seen it in the data, that are clearly covering the bases to make sure that they've got sourcing well covered, so that if a source goes down in China, or it takes till April to get it fulfilled, they have alternative sources.
Yeah, and all that much more important to be focusing on some of those questions on the earnings calls that we're seeing from some of these corporations as well. All right, Tony Uphoff, thank you so much for bringing us that. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey investors, Zack Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.